Howdy, y'all, and welcome back. BeGunners episode 4. So, in the last episode, we talked about some differences between long guns and handguns, and I gave my reasoning why I think a handgun is a good place to start, with the exception of if you're just planning on getting into hunting or a particular shooting sport that requires a long gun. But for home defense or personal protection, I recommend starting handgun, which would next lead to the question revolver or semi automatic. So for this video, we're comparing a Glock 43X and a Smith & Wesson Model 10 snub nose, which honestly, these are just kind of the closest in size that I have on hand. Uh, you could make an argument that this should probably be a 5-shot J-frame Smith & Wesson or like a Ruger LCR or something smaller, but they're pretty kind of sort of close in size. And I think for just talking about the differences in function, these should both work fine. So let's take these over to the table and get a closer look. All right, here's a closer look at the old Model 10. And before we continue, let me load these last couple of dummy rounds. They have a rubberized pad right there, and that absorbs impact from the old-timey, kind of antiquated firing pin on the hammer there. This gun is about a 1971 or 2. So, the snub-nose revolver. This particular model being a K-frame, Model 10, holds 6 shots. It's sort of in between what a lot of people would buy for their first revolver. So normally, for a first revolver, someone's either going to get a medium frame like this, but with a 4 or 5 inch long barrel, or they'll get a snub nose like this, but in a smaller frame size that only holds 5 shots in the cylinder. So this one is kind of in between, which is maybe good for demonstration purposes, but probably a smaller frame, J-frame or LCR would be more comparable to what a lot of people are going to get, especially for concealed carry. So this gun is double action, single action, meaning I can pull the trigger and it rotates the cylinder, brings the hammer back, then releases it, firing around, and the gun goes bang. So bang, 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 double action. Or you can cock the hammer back. Notice how the trigger came back. Now you have a very, very, very light single action brake. And the single action brake on an old Smith & Wesson is a thing of beauty. It is wonderful. However, even as old and broken in as this gun is, this double action won't even register on my trigger scale. It's probably somewhere around 12 pounds, 10 pounds to 12 pounds. It takes a considerable amount of force to bring that trigger back, which is both a positive and a negative. People love that it is harder to have an accident, to accidentally oops that trigger. The drawback is that you have to use a lot more force, which makes it more difficult to keep your sights still as you're pulling it back. New shooters will tend to do a little bit of this as they're, let's see if I can get an angle. Yeah, they'll do a little bit of that as they're trying to work that trigger, or they'll stage it like that and then kind of do like that. So there are definite advantages to this style. There are some semi-automatic guns that also have double action only actions. Some semi-automatic guns will have what is similar to this with a single action only, meaning you rack the slide on the gun, it brings a hammer back, and then you have a very short single action press. When the hammer drops, the gun goes bang, slide reciprocates, loads the next round, and it is single action only. So double action versus single action. All right, so next let's look at the Glock 43X. And I have here the magazine, which is a 10-round magazine, and I have it loaded with a handful of snap caps, dummy rounds. So the way this would load is you insert your magazine firmly, and then you will pull the slide back, and you can see the snap cap right there, and when I release the slide, it picks up around and puts it in the chamber. So now if I remove the magazine and pull good and firm, you see the round eject the way a spent round would eject. So again, you load your magazine, you rack the slide. When you pull the trigger, so this has one action, it's called striker fired. Press the trigger, the gun goes bang. When the gun goes bang, the bullet comes out and the slide is forced rearward, ejecting the cartridge, the shell. And then it picks up the next round and loads it. And when you release the trigger, the action is ready again. Gun goes bang, shell comes out, or cartridge or case, whatever you prefer to call it, comes out, and you're ready to fire again. So that's just a quick breakdown. And for comparison's sake, let's do one more here. Trigger on this comes in at about 5 pounds. So 5-pound trigger versus 12-pound trigger in the Smith & Wesson. All right, before we move forward with this last segment, let me just put this out there. I love revolvers. I love, love, love revolvers. I own more than twice as many revolvers as I do semi-auto handguns. I love them. But if you are my friend and you come to me and say, which one should I get for my first handgun? I am going to strongly recommend that you go with the semi-auto. And here is why. Physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? Now, in the case of these two guns, 38 Special and 9mm, as far as cartridges, as far as calibers, are very, very comparable. The amount of energy that is produced when these go bang is very similar. But in a semi-automatic handgun, when the round goes bang and the bullet comes out of the barrel, you have this action, right? The slide comes back and then it comes forward. Bang, slide comes back. What causes that is energy. Energy being released from the explosion sends that back. Slide comes back forward. So you have this, some of the energy that is being expelled is taken up by that action. Now, it will cause a little bit of this, yes. But in a revolver, when the gun goes bang, the bullet comes out, all of the energy goes into your hand. Now, on a large framed revolver, the weight of the gun absorbs a lot of that. So it's not that bad. But very often when we talk about personal protection and self-defense, people want to get these little small snub-nosed revolvers, and they like the idea of the long double-action trigger pull acting almost like a safety. Also, they're just easier. You don't have an external safety on there. You just load the bullets in, close the cylinder, it's ready to go. You keep your finger off the trigger, and then when you need it, you pull it out and it goes bang. And I get all of that. But when it goes bang, even with 38 Special, it's not pleasant. It's just not pleasant. And I hear people all, oh, it's not that bad. Nuh-uh. It's not pleasant compared to a semi-auto. I can take this gun to the range and put 400 rounds down range, no problem. This one, I can get maybe 200 rounds and I'm kind of done. And with a small like an actual J-frame, pocket-sized revolver, 50, maybe 100 rounds, and I am done. It's not pleasant. And obviously, the gun that you enjoy shooting more is the gun you will become better with, more proficient with. So it's not even close. Also, like I mentioned earlier, with these long double action triggers, they take a lot more time to master. What a lot of people will do, if it's a double action, single action gun, is they'll go to the range and they're cocking the hammer back and then they're shooting and they're cocking the hammer back and they're shooting and they're like, oh, I'm Deadeye, I'm amazing. That's not how you shoot a revolver for self-defense or home defense. You have to practice doing the full double action press because that's how you're going to run it in a self-defense scenario. And that long double action, you're going to move the sights, you're going to move the gun more than with a simple striker-fired operation. It's just, I say striker-fired, semi-auto. If you have a long double action trigger pull on your semi-auto, then it will also take a lot more practice. And that's a thing too. But the direction I like to push people is striker-fired. And that will all come up in future videos. But just for comparing semi-autos to revolvers, yes, these are easier to operate. You put the bullets in, you close the cylinder, it's ready to go. But I am also strongly of the opinion that if you are too lazy to learn how to operate, put the magazine in, rack the slide, now the gun's ready to fire, keep your finger off the trigger, put it in a holster, and now it's safe. If you're too lazy to learn the operation of a semi-auto handgun, then you have no business operating a semi-auto handgun or any handgun. So it's not that difficult to learn. And I promise you, if you have never shot a gun before and I take you to the range, I can have you shooting this really, really well in 2 hours, maybe 1 hour, really well. Like you'll surprise yourself. With one of these, not so much. It's, and again, the really, really, really bad advice that gets given all the time is for people of smaller frame or women. Oh, just get them a snub-nosed revolver. And they say that because it's easier. But they are not pleasant to shoot. And the smaller of a person you are, the less pleasant it becomes to shoot them. Because again, it's action equal opposite reaction. So if you're a little tiny person shooting a little tiny gun, when that thing goes bang, it's going to hurt your hands. It's not fun. It's bad advice that people still give to this day, and it needs to stop. So I'll get off my soapbox now. That's all I got for this episode. Until next time, be easy, y'all.